happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics, and today we got Fiona Apple's classic Fetch the Bolt Cutters, brought to us by friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Vita. Thank you, Vita. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out the Patreon link below or the patron link on the end screen. Now, the previous 2 months, I did Extraordinary Machine and Win the Pawn from Fiona, and I enjoyed those. I talked about them, both of those. I wasn't a big Fiona Apple person, but after listening to those, I understand why she's so highly acclaimed. But this album is something totally different. The acclaim this album has is insane. So I am going to go into a decent amount of detail about this album because I think it's deserving of it. So buckle up. We're going to get to the review soon. This is her 5th studio album. It was released in April of 2020. Her first release since The Idler Wheel way back in 2012. It was recorded between 2015 and 2020. She was thinking about it, though, in 2012, she started to put things together, largely at her house in Venice Beach. It was produced and performed by Apple alongside Amy Aileen Wood, Sebastian Steinberg, and David Garza. The recording consisted of long, often improvised takes with unconventional percussive sounds. I'll get into that more in a second here. GarageBand was used for much of this recording. Fiona credited the album's unedited vocals and long takes to her lack of expertise with the program. She just said simply she didn't know how to work it, so that's why the album kind of sounds like it does. And sometimes those accidents or that unrefined sound is really what a lot of people are looking for. We're going to get back to that unconventional percussion. While conventional instruments such as pianos and drum sets do appear, it also features prominent use of non-musical found objects as percussion. She described the result as, quote, percussion orchestras. Those industrial-like rhythms are contrasted against traditional melodies, and the upbeat songs often subvert traditional pop structures in the verse, chorus, that sort of stuff. I saw they even used one of her deceased dog's bones as percussive instruments. So, they really got creative. It explores freedom from oppression. Fiona identified its chord's message as, quote, fetch the effing bolt cutters and get yourself out of the situation you're in. The title, a quote from the TV series The Fall, which Gillian Anderson said it in The Fall, reflects this idea. It also discusses Apple's complex relationship with other women and other personal experiences, including bullying and sexual assault. It has nevertheless been referred to as Fiona's most humorous album, but I mean, that's not a long list, right? It was released during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many critics found its exploration of confinement time. Well, she didn't write it for COVID, right? COVID had just started when it came out, but she was already working on these. It received widespread acclaim from music critics. I'll get into that in a minute. That's an understatement and a half. Who described it as an instant classic, revolutionary, and her best work to date. It's awarded the Best Alternative Music Album at the Grammys, with Shamika, a song on here, winning Best Rock Performance. Debuted at number 4 on the U.S. Billboard 200 and number 1 on the U.S. Top Alternative Albums. It also charted in the top 15 in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand as her second best-selling album. She did boycott the Grammys because of some things going on there, but she did win those. On the album, she said she approached her voice as a musical instrument, commenting, I have fun with my voice, but I'm not trying to make it pretty all the time. I'm not trying to convince anybody I'm a singer. It just turned out to be another instrument, and I like that. Lyrically, she identified the album's main theme as not being afraid to speak. She later said this was kind of an oversimplification, elaborating that, quote, it's about breaking out of whatever prison you've allowed yourself to live in, and pinpointing the message, as I said earlier, fetch the effing bolt cutters and get yourself out of the situation you're in. She said that writing the album helped free her of the ideas she had of herself, explaining that, quote, this whole album for me has turned into the headache that I had inside of my head, and now it's released. It's like this pulse that we can now all share. Another theme she explores on the album are her complex social relationships with other women. She commented these relationships began to suffer in middle school, and the album features her trying to make peace with, quote, the sorts of women that society has always deemed her competition, such as subsequent girlfriends of her exes. She summarized this idea as, quote, not letting men pit us against each other or keep us separate from each other so they can control the message. It was met with universal acclaim. Many critics deemed it an instant classic. Now, I talked about earlier the critical acclaim. This is insane critical acclaim. Metacritic, who takes all the critics and put them all together in a number between 0 and 100, obviously 100 being a perfect album, gave this a 98. It's the second highest rating ever that they've given an album. Number 1, 10 Freedom Summers by Wadada Leo Smith, which is it's a jazz trumpeter for this set. I had to read it off here because I've never heard of it, but I thought you might want to know what was #1. It was also awarded Pitchfork's first perfect score, 10 out of 10, since 2010's My Beautiful Twisted Fantasy from Kanye, which is a fantastic album. So just unbelievable acclaim, obviously. All right, the music's not going to be in the video, but it will be at a Vimeo link below. Click on that and follow along with me. Let's get started. The album's opening track, I Want You to Love Me. It was initially addressed to a hypothetical lover, but was eventually influenced by Fiona's relationship with writer Jonathan Ames, as well as by a period of meditation in 2010-11 at Spirit Rock Mediation Center in California. The latter experience is explored in the line, and I know when I go, all my particles disband and disperse, and I'll be back in the pulse, which explores a breakthrough she achieved following a throbbing headache where she witnessed, quote, a pulsing space between the people at the retreat, a suggestion of something larger. Look, I did an insane amount of research for this album because there's so much out there on it, and I wanted to understand it better. And so I've condensed all this research down, believe it or not. There's a much bigger story to that, but I'll leave you to go explore that on your own if you're interested. I have listened to this album once. Trey and I last year at the time of this filming, but in 2022, went through and made our top 5 albums, so top 10 total in the video, of all albums from 1965 through 2022. And I listened to this, but I listened to it quickly. I was listening to 30 albums a week, which, yes, that's insane. And I didn't really care for it. Trey loves it. Everybody loves it. I've seen a lot of people say it was a slow burner on them. I did not sit here like this, listen to it in this kind of environment, looking at the lyrics. So I would imagine that I'm going to think much more of it with this kind of critical acclaim. But I'll have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Vita. All right, I Want You to Love Me. Basically, the story of the song is, you're gone, but I want you to love me. I'll take you back. Let's forget our history and let's just, let's be together. But it starts out with that interesting percussion, then it gets to the piano. And I mean, her vocal performance on here is good, but it's not totally refined, right? Even with that ending on there, but just throughout the song, holding notes and stuff, it's not 100% crisp. And so I think that lends into her saying, I'm using it as a musical instrument and not trying to refine this down in the studio to be some sort of perfection that isn't really real most of the time. It's just we can just refine it down into getting that. It can't be replicated in concert, in person. So I really like the way she approached it, but it definitely sounds different. Like the song itself just sounds different. Next up, we have Shamika, the one I talked about that won a Grammy. It's named after a girl who attended middle school with Fiona. It's based on an experience she recalled when she was rejected by a group of popular girls, after which Shamika came up and she was like, why are you trying to sit with those girls? You have potential. The line, Sebastian said I'm a good man in a storm, was inspired by an incident in Marfa, Texas, which is out in the middle of nowhere, where the band were almost arrested for cannabis possession. Bassist Sebastian Steinberg made the comment to Apple in response to how she handled the event. Now, there's a much bigger story on this. She, for a little bit, thought maybe Shamika wasn't real and someone I made up in my imagination, or maybe she was one of the bullies, but one of Fiona's ex-teachers emailed her about it and was like, yeah, no, she was a nice girl. So just another one of those stories I could go on to forever, but I won't. Shamika, she said she had potential, right? So the song just tells the story of what I was talking about and how Fiona had a hard time in middle school, and I think a lot of us did, and how she was trying to not be afraid of the bullies, but that's made the bullies worse because the old misnomer, if you stand up to them, they'll go away, isn't always true. It's probably the right way to play it, but it's not always true. And it's different when a girl gets bullied than a guy. I don't want to speak to what it's like for a girl because I don't know. I just know what it was like as a guy. And yeah, I mean, I would fight all the time and it didn't really matter. But a really good song and a very good example of the odd song structure, right? Her songs don't really have a lot of melody to them. That's not what she's going for. And just a kind of offbeat piano at times. It's just incredibly interesting. The different ways she sings is yeah, it's all just fascinating, man, but a really good song and a really different kind of song structure-wise. Well, next up, we have the title track, sort of. I'll get into that story. Fetch the Bolt Cutters. It's one of the last songs recorded for the album and came after the album already had its title. So they already picked this title. She had not written this song. She didn't plan on writing this song, right? She was already done. She goes, wait a minute, I got one more song. Then she thought, would it be too cliche to actually write a song with the title? No, because none of us would ever know the difference. I assumed it was named for this song, but it was not. English model and actress Cara Delevingne provides background vocals. Fiona chose her in part because her English accent matched that of Gillian Anderson's character in The Fall, the one that the album's named after, who had this line. The sound of barking dogs, which appears at the end, comes from Apple's dog Mercy, Cara's dogs Leo and Alfie, and Zelda Hallman's dog Maddie. Probably the way she couldn't edit out stuff, she just didn't. It also quotes Kate Bush's 1985 single Running Up That Hill, which of course had a resurgence in the past year and a half with Stranger Things. Fetch the Bolt Cutters. What a good song. That is going to actually stick in my head a little bit. Most of her songs don't necessarily stick in the head because they're not built on melody and catchy choruses, but Fetch the Bolt Cutters there. Carl was a good addition here. I think this is probably one where you would have cut the last 30 seconds with the dogs and just different kinds of playing around with the percussion if you knew how to cut it, I think. But it lends to the song, right? The other, before that, it sounded like the dog barks could be in there, right? Among the chaos of kind of her fetching the bolt cutters to get herself out of the kind of little, I won't say prison she's in as much as just this rut and belief system. And she delves it out very good from school, which kind of follows up on Shamika a little bit, to when she became, on the scene in her late teens. I grew up in shoes they told me I could fill. When they came around, I would stand real still. A girl can roll her eyes at me and kill. So this judgment really bothered her back there. Shoes that were not made for running up that hill. So there's the Kate Bush shout out. But like she was, put in this thing. Critics were on her and like, she's got to be this or that. And she's just not. She's figured out this prison she built herself. Now that she's in her early 40s, she can cut herself out of it. So I think it's a really good song with a really good message. Next up, we have Under the Table. It describes an antagonistic dinner party. She has said it was informed by an expensive dinner she attended with, quote, lots of bragging about things I wouldn't brag about. She continued that following an offensive comment made by one of the guests, I called the guy out and may have messed the dinner up a little bit, but I was right. I mean, there's a long little passage on that, but I thought that was funny. Under the Table, more odd percussion. It's been on every single side. I don't want to go into it on every single, not odd as in bad. It's really interesting. Even the piano playing on this one again. She's not worried about being in sync. Some of it's offbeat, and the way she's using her voice in every single song as a vocal instrument, I really enjoy. This song, I mean, it's describing what she talked about, this dinner party, but it's anybody can go through this. Like under the table, this means somebody's kicking you under the table, maybe nudging you under the table. She got some great lines in here. Kick me under the table all you want. I won't shut up. I won't shut up. That chorus sticks in your head there. I'd like to buy you a pair of pillow-soled hiking boots to help you with your climb, or rather to help the bodies that you step over along your route so they won't hurt like mine. But she's telling him, look, man, you're not going to shut me up. And then one of the post-choruses, if I don't want to go, leave me alone. Don't push me, Cookie. Don't push me. Don't you push. Calling him Cookie condescendingly, right? If you get me to go and I open my mouth to the effing mutton that they're talking about. So I think mutton being sheep, right? I'm not going to follow along like a sheep. You can pout, but don't you shush me. Hey, look, what I know about Fiona, and this being the third album of hers I did, I would not wrong Fiona because you're going to end up in a song and it's going to end up bad for you. But another song that's really good. Up to the fifth track, we have Relay. Contains a sample from My Kettle, My Cats by Sebastian Steinberg. It features the line, evil is a relay sport when the one who's burned turns to pass the torch, which she first wrote when she was 15 years old. She explores her resentments, some of which she has characterized as funny or petty, including social media influencers in the line, I resent you presenting your life like an effing propaganda brochure. Isn't that right? Track is musically influenced, I read, by both cheerleading chants and R&B, which should be a great combination. Relay. Probably the most change-ups of any song so far. She kind of sings it, especially at the start with this odd accent. You kind of do get when it almost starts out with percussion, almost like a band, like you would think with the cheerleading. Then it does switch to more an R&B tempo, and then it just goes all over the place that last minute plus a cappella. And I mean, the repeating chorus does stick in your head. After I said she sings stuff that doesn't stick in your head, she surprises me with a couple of these. But evil is a relay sport when the one who's burned turns to pass the torch. So in other words, this hatred is just a cycle that goes on. And she talks about that and all the stuff she resents you for. Got the little social media influencer thing thrown in there. But then towards the end, you got a little interlude where she says, I'm sorry. So she's going to break that cycle of hatred. So, a well-written song. Except we have Rack of His. She wrote it over a 10-year period. It was inspired by two different relationships she was in. That happens if you write it over a 10-year period a lot of times. The title was inspired by band member David Garza saying, oh, I did terrible things to that rack of his. So she just chose that as a title. Rack of His. So basically just talking about how she gave this guy everything. She wasn't bored. It wasn't because she was bored and nothing else to do, because she actually genuinely cared about him, followed him from room to room. So I know it's a mixture of two different relationships she's blended into one for this song. But of course, it's because I was loving you so much. It's the only reason I gave my time to you. And that's it. That's a kick in you giving up, because you won't like it when there's nothing to do. And the bridge, and I've been used so many times, I've learned to use myself in kind. So some difficult things on here for Fiona, but she overcame it. So another well-written song. Now we move on to Newspaper. It was also inspired by two different relationships. I don't know if it's the same ones. Remember, this thing was written over a number of years. It features backing vocals from her sister, cabaret singer Maud Maggart. Fiona said that the track's title is arbitrary. She could not recall its origin. Newspaper. So this is one of them, I talked about it at the start. A part of the sound is about her relationships with other females. And this is what this is about. She's singing it to this girl who was with a guy that Fiona used to be with. And Fiona had all this stuff happen to her from this guy. Now he's watching him do the same thing to this girl. And she feels bonded to this girl from a distance because it's like, I went through all this. We're the only two that understand what this is like. But the guy, being a manipulator, as a lot of guys are, has already manipulated this other girl into hating Fiona, right? He's poisoned her so that way she wouldn't listen to her, ever want to befriend her. They couldn't compare notes, so to speak. And I hear her singing with a little bit more emotion than on some of the songs. You really get into it. And that percussion really works well on this. I thought one of the great verses, I grew concerned when I saw him start to covet you. When I learned what he did, I felt close to you. In my own way, I fell in love with you. But he's made me a ghost to you. I watch him let go of your hand. I want to stand between you, but it's not what I'm supposed to do. I watch him walk over, talk over you, and be mean to you, and it makes me feel close to you. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a really, really well done song, and one I don't think you're writing out of the blue. I think you got some life experience in this one. Next up, we have Ladies. Lyrics are written by Fiona, music composed by Steinberg and David Garza. It also explores the idea of, quote, not letting men pit women against each other, she said, exploring the relationships between different ex-lovers of the same man, which really sounds like this last track, right? On the track, she repeats the word ladies in various different styles. She said, I like the word ladies, and then it just got to be really fun to say in different ways. Like ladies, we better get into it. And like ladies are so nice. The line, I'm a fruit bat, refers to the use of the word bats to mean mad, with Fiona using the term as an affectionate way of referring to herself. All right, ladies, that ending part, she's almost singing it in a mumble, but just a great sentiment, right? Basically, ruminations on the looming effect and the parallax view, and the figure and the form and the revolving door that keeps turning out more and more good women like you. So once again, about this guy who's just cycling through women. Fiona being a previous one, yet another woman to whom I won't get through because she won't listen. Because once again, just like in the previous song, he's been poisoned, right? He's poisoned her. In the second verse, the ladies, when he leaves me, please be my guest, or whatever I've left in his kitchen cupboards. And in the back of his cabinet, it's like, I left that there. It's yours. You can have it. There's no hard feelings. Then she says there's a dress in the closet. Don't get rid of it. It's not even hers. It's from the ex-wife of another ex of hers who kind of left it there for her. So, yeah. And then we get that fruit bat in the chorus. Cuter than a mutton head maniac, which remember we had mutton in the track Under the Table. So could be some throw out there. And I like nobody can replace anybody else. So it would be a shame to make it a competition. And no love is like any love, so it would be insane to make a comparison with you. We could all push into these things, right, in our relationships. Just really good advice and another super well-done song. Next up, we have Heavy Balloon. It explores depression and, quote, the way that depressed people can start to treat their depression like a friend or a plaything. Fiona said it. She said it's almost like you get Stockholm Syndrome with your own depression, like you're kidnapped by your own depression. She said, quote, the imagery of that one came to me years ago. Because a boyfriend of mine was talking to me about his father and his depression. The way he was describing his father moving around the house, weighed down by something made me think, we're just always trying to keep up. Oh my God, this is not staying off me long enough. I just can't really move around. It's this hindrance, this obligation, this constant thing to be taken care of. Heavy Balloon, boy, that last third of it, that percussion really, really went to the song. But and you know what it's about? It's about depression. So it starts out with that heavy balloon. People, I guess, we play the heavy balloon. We keep it up to keep the devil at bay, but it always falls way too soon. And then she gets in some food analogies. I've been sucking it in so long that I'm busting at the seams, probably that energy. And then verse 2 is talking about weather and the sun and animals, and it constricts like a boa on a hose. Nothing flows, so the pressure grows. Instead of the sea, just talking about that depression and that feeling. People like us get so heavy and so lost sometimes, so lost and so heavy that the bottom is the only place we can find. You get dragged down to the same spot enough times in a row. The bottom begins to feel like the only safe place that you know, which lends back to what I talked about in her quote at the start of the song. But a really good song where the percussion just really added like to the ambiance and mood of the song. We got 4 tracks left. We got Cosmonauts. It was originally recorded with longtime producer John Bryan for the 2012 comedy film This Is 40, for which Bryan composed the score. The track was not used in the film, although her dull tool did appear. Director Judd Apatow wanted the track to explore the idea of a lifelong romantic relationship, which challenged Fiona, who, quote, said she did not know if she wanted to be together with anybody forever. Because of this, she said, I interpreted it as like, it's going to be you and me in this little vessel by ourselves in space, except it's going to weigh a lot more, and you're going to really get on my nerves. Let's go. Cosmonauts, a great contrasting thought process here, because it starts off, your face ignites a fuse to my patience. Whatever you do, it's going to be wrong. There's no time to interrupt the detonation. So you're like, oh man, it's going to go bad. But then as it goes on, I grew with you and now I've changed. What I've become is something I can't be without your loving. Be good to me. It isn't a game. No, let me see. It's you and me. Forgive, good God. How do you suppose it will survive? Because you and I will be like a couple cosmonauts, except with way more gravity than when we start off. So more base to this relationship, right? More real stuff. She says in the bridge, when you resist me, hun, I cease to exist because I only like the way I look when looking through your eyes. So it turns from being, oh, this is going to be she can't stand him to, oh yeah, I can't live without you. And she said, of course, she started off a love song with my patience with you has run out. So interesting that it was written for a movie. So it still fits though with the rest of this album quite well, even though it was originally recorded in 2012. Now we have For Her. She is the only musician credited on this, so she did everything. The track's depiction of a man's abuse of a woman is based with permission on the stories told to Fiona by a friend who worked as an intern at a film production company. The song addresses a man on behalf of a friend in Fiona's words, quote, to in a roundabout way tell her story that she's not able to tell. It also draws on her own experiences with her commenting, quote, it started out me wanting to write something about my own feelings, but it's just too hard. I wanted to make it not just about me, but about other people, especially the lines, good morning, you raped me in the same bed your daughter was born in, was partly written in response to the nomination of Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, despite allegations of sexual misconduct against him. And she goes on and kind of talks about that, how it's looked the other way for guys of power. For Her, a very powerful song. Double track vocals, right? Because it sounds like there's somebody singing in harmony with her, but it's her because she's the only one on this. And, she kind of hits you can see how it could be at a judge and about everything else. But really the vocal delivery is fantastic here. She's done this in a lot of songs, changed up tempo and pace. This is almost like a rap. She's going so quick, but it just works so well with the arrangement on here. And it goes after the judge, and then it goes after the Hollywood person, right? Treating his wife like a guest, getting his girl to clean up his mess, never showing weakness unless it's award season, right? Getting that humbleness, so he gets the award. But, you arrive and drive by like a sawed-up bat, like you should know, but you don't know where it's at, right? And it just keeps going with that, like you should know, but you don't know where it's at. So she does this in a lot of songs, right? She repeats choruses a lot, she repeats verses a lot, but it doesn't get monotonous. Some artists do this and you're like, just make the song short. It does not feel that way with her at all because of the way these are arranged and the way she changes up her voice. Next up, we have the shortest track on here. We have Drum Set. It was written in a period following her breakup with Jonathan Ames that I talked about earlier. She had a minor argument with her band, in which drummer Amy Eileen Wood removed her drum set for a live performance. Fiona said she misinterpreted this as, quote, as if they were pissed at me and that they weren't going to come back, at which point she improvised the lyrics to the song. The drum set is gone, and the rug it was on is still here, screaming at me. The band later recorded this song in one take. So that empty spot over there going, golly, man, they have left me too. Drum set, which you've got Fiona on the mellotron, on the chair. You got David Garza on percussion and organ. You got Sebastian Steinberg on harp. So we had a lot of stuff going on in this song, even though it was shorter. It's just basically about someone who left her, right? Why did you not want to try? Why'd you take it all away? And it just kind of goes on with that. And it talks about the drum set being gone. And dialing the phone's no longer fun because they don't want to talk to her. So really interesting song. Well done to pack all that into a 2-minute, 40-second song. We got one song left. We got On I Go. Fiona's called it a Visapane chant. I don't know what that means, which she originally sang while in prison following a 2012 arrest for hash possession. She has said that the song explores, quote, how there doesn't have to be any specific meaning or reward or consequences. of the things I'm doing. All right, On I Go. An easy song to break down lyrically because the 4-line verse is repeated 13 times with a little bit of other stuff thrown on I Go. Not toward or away. Up until now, it was day, next day. Up until now, in a rush to prove. But now I only move to move. So very catchy. One of my least favorite songs on here. It's not a bad song at all, but an interesting way to end the album, which is going to segue me into my favorite tracks. And it's interesting. This is kind of the album that where I would pick out a song, go back and re-listen to it a lot. It's more of an album of like, you got to take it as a whole piece of art, but I'll get into that in the overall score. My honorable mentions: Under the Table, Newspaper, and Heavy Balloon. My faves are going to be I Want You to Love Me, Shamika, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, and For Her. Now we're going to get to my overall score, and I'm going to just mention it. But this is an album that's got to be taken really from start to finish and appreciated as a diverse piece of art, right? It definitely lives up to the hype as far as quality, but also as far as it is definitely a non-traditional musical type of album in the fact that it doesn't follow a lot of the accepted standards, right? Of, verse, chorus, of lots of melodies. And there are some, but, a lot of things are not perfect, and that's the way it's supposed to be. I think that is the charm and the allure of it. Maybe a sky high overall score of 9.0 on first listen, which I hardly ever give those out, but this is just a wonderful, wonderful album. So let me know what you think of this down below. What are your favorite tracks in your overall score? Thanks again to Vita for bringing this to me. Go check out those other Fiona reactions I did for her. And until next time, guys, I will see you.